I've been making wood signs with my Cricut for over 5 years. I make a ton for our home, some to give as gifts, and also some to sell. Actually, fun fact is that Whiskey and Whit started out as a wood sign business before I came here on YouTube. So today I'm partnering with Cricut to share with you a ton of tips and tricks that I've either learned the hard way or through a ton of research so you can get up and running quickly and not have to make the mistakes I did. So stay tuned. I want to give a huge thank you to Cricut for sponsoring today's video. I have been using my Cricut machine since 2016 when I got one for my wedding, and it was mainly to make wood signs. I had no idea, you guys, what I was doing. I didn't know where to buy the wood. What kind of wood did I need? I had no power tools at home. How was I going to do this? So by the time you finish this video, you will know all of my secrets to making foolproof wood signs. So let's get started. Let's take a trip to the hardware store and get all of our materials.
So I recently saw this sign set at Hobby Lobby and it was out of my price range, and also I was not a huge fan of the saying. I wanted something a little bit more personal, so I knew that I could use my Cricut to create something that was more our personality and told the story of our family in our house. So that's what we'll be making today.
When I first started making signs, I had literally no idea where to go, what types of wood to get, what was the cheapest wood without being like terrible quality. Here at Home Depot, but a lot of these tips that I'll share inside the store are pretty much the same for a lot of other hardware stores as well. So let's get shopping. So for big signs, I like to come over here to the project panel section because they have nice sheets of wood. You've got the wood grain here, but they're not super expensive. So typically this would be fine if you're just going for a sign. It's a 1/4 inch thick. However, if you're trying to frame it out, you definitely don't want to do that because you're not going to have enough grip here for your nails to go in. So I like to go with a 1/2 inch thickness. So here you're getting a 2x4 sheet. For 25 bucks, you can make a ton of signs out of this. You're gonna have enough thickness to nail it in and also enough for multiple signs. So we're gonna grab this 1/2 inch and then we're gonna have them cut it down for us into 4 different pieces. So then we are looking at about $6.50 a sign-ish.
So here's a tip for you to save money if you don't have power tools at home to cut down this wood. Go to Home Depot or your local hardware store and ask them to cut down the larger sheets. You'll save money by buying one larger sheet rather than the smaller cut pieces, and they will do up to 3 cuts for free for you. So I just asked this nice guy to cut down my piece that was 4 feet across into 1 foot wide pieces. So I'm looking at a 12 by 24 piece of wood, which will be perfect for my project. I like to frame my signs, so I use 1 by 2 pieces of wood. I usually buy an 8-foot strip, which here is $2.28. Also see them referred to as 1 by 2 furring strips, same thing. Don't just grab stuff in the front because that's usually the rejects. So grab towards the back and then get your piece of wood out so you can look at it. I put it on my cart like this and look down the piece of wood. You can see here it curves wicked left. I grabbed one more piece and this one is a lot more straight. You're not gonna find anything that's gonna be 100% perfect, especially in the furring strip section for how cheap they are, but this is a great way to take a look and make sure that your pieces aren't going to be super wonky when you get them home. Another option is to check out their laminated wood, or other stores call it glued lumber, and it's typically by your select pine, so just regular wood. You can get pieces that are already cut down. They tend to have a bigger wood grain, and these are a lot quicker. You don't have to wait for them to cut them down. However, they are a little bit more expensive. So I got my 2 pieces of birch plywood. Out of the 4, these are the 2 that are about the same size. They don't do exact cuts. They just try to get it as close as they can, but these honestly were done pretty well. So these are the 2 that we are going to use, and now it's time to figure out how big our frame needs to be. So I'm gonna show you how I do that, and it's pretty easy to measure. So we're gonna measure our short side first. I always like my pieces to be flush with the shorter side. It's a personal preference, but that's what we're going to measure. So this is just shy of 12 inches. So I took that exact measurement so I could cut it. Now, if you do not have a miter saw, you can cut your 1x2s with this, which is called a miter box and saw. They're available on Amazon, and I will link mine down below. I just wanted to show you it's a pretty quick process, and you can get a pretty decent cut that you can just sand down. But because we have a miter saw, that's my first choice. However, if you don't have one, the miter box will work just as good. Once I cut my 12-inch exact pieces to each end, then I laid them down and then I measured the top and the bottom to include those pieces. So then that way my border will overlap. So that was about 25.5-ish. So I went through, measured those exactly to the measurement that I got, cut them, and then made sure that they all lined up, and they did. Next up is to sand your pieces, and if you do not have a orbital sander, grab yourself one of these sanding blocks. You can get it for a couple bucks at the hardware store, and it makes sanding so much easier. You can get them in a variety of grits as well, so that is super helpful. So sanding block if you do not have a orbital sander. Then I decided to stain these in Briar Smoke by Varathane, and this is available at Home Depot. Now, a huge tip here is if you've never used a stain before or used it on this type of wood, be sure to test it before you stain everything. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen online, oh, this color looks like this on maple, for example, and then I put it on pine and it looks nothing like that. You want to make sure that you test it before you stain everything so you aren't stuck in a situation where you got everything stained and you don't like it. Another staining tip is to stain one side of your main piece of your sign. This is going to be the back. However, it's going to make it look so much more polished and finished. Now it is time to make our stencil and paint. So I like to use these Dollar Tree $1 tablecloths to put down over my table so I have a large workspace so I can get over the top of my signs. I let the stain dry overnight, and then I took some Waverly ink chalk paint to create a chalkboard finish. You can use whatever paint you want, just make sure that there's a matte finish because you don't want it to be shiny because then it won't look like a chalkboard. With this black paint that I have, I really only need to give it one coat, so I just made sure that all my brush strokes were going in the same direction and let it dry. So now in Cricut Design Space, I uploaded 2 cut images, and I will link these down below if you are a Florida Georgia Line fan. The lyrics I'm putting on my signs are from Grow Old, their song. That was Alex and my wedding song, so I'm making this as an anniversary gift for our new bedroom makeover. So once you have the design for your sign in there, whether you design it in Design Space or import it or get an SVG, etc., you're going to want to create your stencil. So to do this, I like to give myself a square or rectangle border so it helps me line it up to the sign. So because I know my sign is 12 inches in width, I'm going to create a shape that is 12 inches in width. I'm going to center my text over the top by using the option above, and then I'm going to select Slice down in the right-hand corner. What that's going to do is cut my text out of that shape because they're both selected, and that's going to give me what looks like a stencil. So I'm going to repeat this again. A shape that is 12 inches wide. I put my text that I uploaded within the box, make sure everything is centered, the right size, and then I select both the text and the shape and click Slice down in the right hand corner. The reason I put the box around is, one, it really just helps me create the stencil, but it also helps me line it up when I go to stick it on the wood, and I will show you that in a minute. So then I cue everything to cut in my Cricut, and it's telling me here that I need a 12x24 mat. So I grab my larger mat and also some Cricut vinyl. This is the first time I've used Cricut stencil vinyl, so I wanted to test it out on some signs. So if you guys have seen my videos before, I typically use scrap vinyl as a stencil. However, I did want to see how the stencil vinyl worked because I haven't used it before. So I've set it up on my mat just like I would any other vinyl. I got everything queued up, hit the start button, and my Cricut went to work. It's so easy. It lets me know what mats to load when, how large everything needs to be, and my maker takes care of everything for me. Now you could definitely make these stencils on a Joy as well as an Explorer, so it's not just a maker specific project. And that's what I love about my different Cricuts. I could honestly make this project on any of them. Finn has been loving all of the Cricut projects I've been doing lately. He hears it going and he comes running across the house. Finn, what are we doing? Are we watching the Cricut? Are you watching the Cricut? Are you watching the Cricut? What's it doing? Is it cutting out Mommy's stencil? So once everything is cut out, then I go through and weed it. Now, when you typically weed a vinyl decal, you weed out all of the outside pieces and leave the letters. Here you're going to do it backwards because we are creating a stencil. Now, do you remember that box that I told you would come in handy? The machine will cut it out for you and then you can easily weed it. So here you have a sized rectangle that you know is 12 inches wide, and that will help when it comes to application. Now, one of my tricks with the Cricut transfer tape, I absolutely love it for most projects, but for wood signs, it is a little too grippy. So I go ahead and stick it on my table a couple times to get rid of the tackiness. And so it's still sticky, but it's not super duper sticky, so it's not going to rip up my paint I just put on my wood. So I do that. Sometimes I've put it on my pants. I do a variety of different things, but you just want to get rid of that stickiness. Then once I made sure everything was squeegeed on down and varnished, then I pulled off the back of the stencil vinyl and applied it to my sign. And so here, the top left is going to be "Tell Me That You Love Me," and this one that I'm putting on says "Say We'll Always Work It Out," which is from that Florida Georgia Line song. And now I'm just pulling back my transfer tape, and as you can see, it's popping up just a little bit, so I'm using my squeegee to help me make sure that everything kind of sticks down. The nice thing with the stencil vinyl is it's pretty forgiving, so if you need to reposition, no problem. Now here is where the technique will differ based on what you're trying to do. So here I'm doing a black based sign. If I put Mod Podge on this, what I've found is that the Mod Podge sometimes will kind of run a little bit and you'll be able to see it after the fact. So instead of using Mod Podge to seal down my stencil, I'm going to use the same color paint that's on the back of the sign, which is black. So I'm just going through with a disposable little makeup sponge, dabbing on a light coat as you can see here, and that helps seal down your stencil so things won't bleed later on. Then once that's dry, I grabbed my white Waverly chalk paint and I did the same process. Now here you want to make sure you have just a little bit of paint on your disposable makeup sponge, and I go up and down. I do 3 light coats instead of 1 heavy coat, and that helps with bleeding. I sometimes can paint it on and do 1 coat and it not bleed, but really for the amount of times that I've done this, this process works the best. It gives me the least amount of bleeding. So this is what I would recommend. Use that dabbing motion with your little makeup sponge. And then I let it dry a little bit so it's not tacky, wet to the touch, but then I go ahead and peel it off. Also, when you are removing the little pieces inside of the letters, make sure that you're going really lightly. Don't captain hook at it because you will take a chunk out of the wood. So be very gentle and go in almost parallel to the wood instead of towards or perpendicular to the wood. Now I see this all the time. I get a lot of questions. Oh my gosh, it bled a little bit, like my whole project's ruined. No, do not worry. This bleeding is totally fine. Grab a little paintbrush and just make a couple little updates, just cover it up, and it's really easy. I'm not a good painter. I do not have the steadiest hand, and I can still fix them. But for the most part, that is very minimal bleeding. Once that's all dry, it's time to go outside and grab our framing, and here you'll have to decide if you want to have your sign be on the back of the frame or the front of the frame. So typically I do the back of the frame, but I decided to do the front of the frame for this one. So basically what that means is your wood will be flush with the front of your sign. So I go through and add my 2 pieces that are flush to the sign first. I do 3 nails across, so 2 on each end and then 1 in the center. Then I grab my 2 sides and I do 2 nails from that piece into the 2 top and bottom border pieces, and then 3 along the side. So for the top and the bottom, you're looking at 3 nails. For the sides, you're looking at about 7. Now for this, because of the way that I framed it and because I'm going to add one of these sawtooth hangers, I added a couple extra nails to the top. Now this is the easiest way I've found to add hanging hardware to your sign. I grab a pack of these small hooks. Now you're going to want to make sure that you check the weight of your sign and make sure you have the right size, but you literally measure halfway across the top of the sign, line it up, take a hammer, pound on either side, and they work really, really well. The last thing is sealing your signs. I get this question a lot. How do you seal it? Should I seal it? For signs, I like to use this spray polyacrylic. It's clear matte and it's water-based, and I just spray a liberal coat across the top once the border is on, and that will also seal the wood as well. Black and dark wood are the vibes that we're going for in our new master bedroom makeover. So I'm so excited to get these in over our new nightstands once we build those. Those are on the list. But I think these are such a fun commemoration of our wedding day and our wedding song. And honestly, I love it even more because it's not a super common song. So you're not going to be able to go find this at the store. And so I'm so thankful for my Cricut so I can make these for our home. Thank you so much for watching, and also a huge thank you again to Cricut for sponsoring today's video. I am so glad I could work with them to share my secrets with you all. Let me know down in the comments what you learned today, and also if you have other secrets of your own that you've established, let me know. I love learning from you guys. Be sure to hit subscribe if you are new so you don't miss a future Whiskey and Whit video, and I will catch you all in the next one. Bye!